Hello, everyone. My name is Chase McCurdy. I'm the director of 33 Gallery, aka 33G, as well as the host of Gallery Notes. We are here in the space of sisterhood for our 34th edition, in which we're going to talk about this idea of editing in frame. As always, we are joined by filmmaker and tribe at 33G behind the camera, Edison Lockwood II, and in the front office is our associate director, Samantha Vatone, who is also the curator of Sisterhood, our current exhibition that'll be on view through July 31st. All right, Gallery Notes 34, this idea of editing in frame. It is going to seem particular to some of you in what we think of as photography, videography, but these ideas can be translated to any of the visual arts practices into really any sort of life practice. And you're going to see how this idea of editing in frame and one of the core components relates to an underlying theme of ours that has come up a number of times in gallery notes. But in general, when I speak of this idea of editing in frame, I'm speaking about really the result of practice, learning, and refinement over time. Once upon a time, as an early photographer, we're talking about 15 years ago now, when I really started what I thought was my career as a photographer in earnest. If I had the opportunity to photograph a person, say a studio or portrait session or an event, I would very often do what a lot of us do, is overshoot. I know a lot of us who come from, especially who were raised as photographers in the digital era. There was a point that you would just shoot as many pictures as you can. You would see yourself with project folders from a single event or day or shoot where you're eclipsing 500 to 1,000 images, right? I think that's okay for a young photographer, a young videographer, really anyone. But for me, as I learned more, learn more in a number of ways, right? Learn more from a craft perspective, understanding light and shadow, understanding my aperture, right? Understanding f-stop from the shallow to the deep, understanding ISO and the relationships of all of these aspects to image making, and especially with experience, this idea of timing. As I became more experienced, I found myself naturally making less images, right? I found myself, if it were a shoot or an event, from a project folder of 500 to 1,000 pictures, I may barely even touch 100 pictures total. When I was photographing music early on in my career, I went from, if I had 3 minutes in the photo pit, making hundreds of pictures in those 3 minutes, to being a photographer recognizing, oh, let me spend more time here, especially if it's an artist I didn't know. Let me spend more time listening to the music, engaging with the fans who are at the very front by the photo pit, who waited hours or traveled hours many times to see this artist. Let me hear the lyrics, let me feel it. And by that point, because my technical skill had improved, I don't need to make as many images to really capture the moment, right? I'm becoming more invested in the present. I'm becoming more invested in what is taking place, the moment that I'm a part of, that I'm then tasked with making a truthful or somehow sincere or honest image of. My focus is there. So I'm not making hundreds of images. I'm editing in my mind. I'm editing through my practice. I'm editing through my intention. And thus coming back with, say, instead of 500, 50, but instead of delivering 30 because I'm unsure, I'm delivering 10 pictures that are impactful rather than a bunch of images that are just so-so, right? That comes with time, right? You can think of your filmmakers. Edison and I were talking. The only film shoot that I ever was on when I lived in Los Angeles that wrapped on time or even a bit early was a film shoot. They were shooting actual film, and shooting had to stop once they were out of film. Same in filmmaking. If you're able to make a bunch of shots over and over, a bunch of takes over and over with infinite digital storage, yeah, you may get a bunch of shots, but now you're stuck in that editing room reviewing it all, and now you're making your process that much longer, that much more difficult by just relying on doing it over, doing it later, or just fixing it later, as opposed to being more intentional with your framing, with your light, with working with your actors or actresses and these kinds of things. So really, this idea of editing in frame really comes down to this idea of practice over time, refining your practice and your vision, right? This is why we look at a whole lot while we practice and learn. You're both looking at photography, photographers in that instance, or artists that you do like, that you don't like. You just want to see a whole bunch. And that's how you start to refine your taste, right? Your taste is not just what you are drawn to. Your taste is also informed by what you are repelled by, right? So you're refining your practice. You're refining by looking at others. And ultimately, the highest level of refinement to me is spending so much time with your own work and being so practiced in editing and critiquing your own work that you are able to refine your own practice as you go. Also, editing in frame, you'll see this idea of intentionality, right? Those of you who have been following us in Gallery Notes recognize this idea of intentionality that comes up regularly in what we talk about and what we do. If you're going to be good, or even if you're going to find meaning in anything, the sense of intentionality needs to be there. And I think that last major element when we think of editing in frame, and this is an idea, that speaks even to procrastination as a whole, is do it now. And for my filmmakers and photographers, do it now, not quote unquote in post, right? This is the last little note. In photography, you'll see a lot of people who will just be okay with not taking the proper time to compose their scene, light, and their image. And they'll just rely on quote unquote doing it in post or fixing it in post. I believe in fixing it then, there, in the moment. And that way, you're just getting better as opposed to just wasting yours and other people's time. With love and respect, I'm going to leave it there. This is Chase McCurdy, the director of 33 Gallery, aka 33G. I'm here with Edison Lockwood II, filmmaker and tribe at 33G, and our associate director, Samantha Batone. This has been Gallery Notes, and we look forward to seeing y'all and hearing from y'all sometime soon. Much love. Peace.